Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Miha and welcome to my chessrealm YouTube channel. So we are still at the Tata Steel tournament and in the third round there was an interesting battle between Daniil Dubov and Vidit Gujrathi. Let's see what happened. Daniil Dubov had white pieces and he started with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4 and now knight to f6. We have two knights defense. Tempting white to play knight to g5, later responding with d5, continuing with a very sharp game, but white doesn't go for it. d3 was played and now bishop to c5, c3 and now d6, and the game has transposed into a classical variation of Italian game. And now white plays bishop to g5, pinning this knight on f6. So black plays h6, attacking bishop on g5, forcing white to decide what to do with the bishop. So bishop goes back to h4, and now black plays a5, creating this escape hedge for his bishop at some point later in the game, but white plays knight to a3, preparing to deploy it on c2. However, black is on the move and immediately grabs the opportunity. Bishop captures knight on a3. And of course, white recaptures. White has a bishop pair now, but his pawn structure is worse than the pawn structure of black, so we'll see who will be better able to exploit these advantages. And now black plays queen to e7. And white has decided to castle king side. Now, of course, this knight on f6 is pinned, so black plays knight goes back to b8, preparing to deploy it here on d7. First of all, reinforcing knight on f6, also putting some pressure on this e5 pawn, because black is sensing white to play d4, and this is what happened in the game. d4 was played. Well, of course, black cannot simply capture on d4, because then rook to e1 is very deadly. For example, if black castles king side, then white simply pushes e5, and when black captures, then simply knight recapture, threatening with discover attack on the queen. Well, queen to d8 doesn't help. Then we have this knight to f7, very nice. Even if rook captures, then bishop captures. Of course, rook cannot capture because it's pinned by the bishop. So after, let's say, queen to f6, then rook goes to e8, and of course rook cannot move, so king can only go to h7, and then rook starts eating black's pieces. So in the game, black plays knight from b goes to d7. And now white plays rook to b1, putting some pressure here on this pawn on b7. And now black has decided he has enough for this pin on this knight, so black plays g5, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to g3, and now knight captures on e4. Now this pawn was not protected, so this was a very nice pawn sacrifice for an attack. Now white plays queen to c2. Now his position is very complicated. Well, for example, if knight captures bishop on g3, then f-pawn recaptures. Of course, once this knight is gone, then either rook or maybe even bishop will capture this pawn on f7. And this would be deadly. Well, castling king side doesn't help. Then we have queen to g6. Now this pawn on f7 is pinned, so black could only play king to h8, but then queen to h6 check, king to g8, and knight goes to g5, threatening here with checkmate. Well, knight to f6 doesn't help. This square is double attack, so this is over for black. So here black would somehow have to deploy this bishop here to e7, neutralizing the pressure on this diagonal from the white light square bishop. But after knight to b6, one of the very interesting continuations is if bishop would capture on f7 check. Well, of course, king cannot capture because after knight to g5 it's discover attack. If king goes to let's say g7, then rook goes to f7, double attack on both pieces. If, however, king would go back to e8, then we have queen to g6 check, and if king goes to d7, again rook to f7, and there goes our queen. If, however, king goes to d8, then we have knight to f7, and there goes our rook. So in the game, black would have to capture with the queen, but then we would have knight to e5 discover attack on the queen. Well, again, white threatens with invasion on the 7th rank, so black would immediately have to play queen to h7, trying to exchange the most dangerous pieces. Of course, white is a piece down, so white would have to play queen to e1, preparing discover another deadly discover attack. So black would have to capture after white recaptures, let's say king to d7, and now rook to e1, preparing rook to f5, later with queen to d6, and rook from f5 would go to d5 with checkmate. So here again, black would have to be very precise and play rook to g8, preparing queen to g7, trying to exchange pieces, but here white would save himself with perpetual check after queen to e6, king to d8, and after queen to f6, king d7, and so on. Oh, you can see it was a very tactical continuation, not so easy to see even for grandmasters. In the game, however, black doesn't capture bishop on g3, instead f5 was played. First of all, protecting this knight, and maybe once this knight is gone, after that f4, trapping this bishop. So white plays d pawn captures on e5, d pawn recaptures, and now rook to e1. Now lots of pieces here are x-rayed here in this e file. So currently black cannot push f4, so first black plays knight captures on g3. Now, of course, a-pawn recaptures, and now e4, taking this knight, but as long as here black has a queen, black won't capture it. So white plays g4, trying to undermine this defender of pawn on e4. So black reinforces pawn on e4 with knight to c5, and now white plays knight to e4. Now this pawn on f5 is double attack, so black has no other options but to double defend it with rook to f8. And now white has decided to capture this pawn, and after bishop recaptures, now in this position, very complicated, but white has set up a very interesting attack. Rook captures on b7 was played. Of course, rook is not protected. Well, let's see, if knight captures rook on b7, then we have bishop to b5 check. Of course, if king goes to d8, then we have knight to c6, and there goes our queen. If black tries to defend the check with c6, then bishop simply captures, and after that king to d8, and now white would probably capture bishop on f5. After rook recaptures, then we have rook to e4. First of all, attacking queen, and of course, once this rook is gone, for example, to put check, then we have discover attack on the rook. So here black would have to play rook to e5, but then after queen to d2, after let's say king to c7, now rook captures on e5, queen recaptures, queen goes to b7, king has to go to b6, queen to b7, and there goes our rook. Okay, so the correct continuation for black in this position would be king to f7. Of course, bishop is not protected, so here knight captures on f5. Here again, black would have to play very carefully. Queen would have to go to d5, for example, and after bishop to c4 check. Of course, king cannot go to g6 because again we have knight to e7 check, and if queen captures, rook captures here on e4. Again, once this rook is gone, we have discovered attack on king, and of course queen is also attacked, so again this would be losing for black. So here black would have to play king to f6, but then knight would probably capture on h6. Black would still be rook up, but with the king in the open. White would have a very strong attack here, so this would be very interesting to see how this game would play on. But in the game, however, in the actual game, that didn't happen. In this position, black doesn't capture. Black plays rook to f6. You might think that black wants to protect this 6-6 square to prevent this check. Well, that's not the case. Black played rook to f6 because black wants to leave this f8 square empty for his king to escape. And also black is still protecting this bishop on f5. So now white plays queen to b1, preparing this rook to b8 with a check with deadly attack on the last rank. And now black has no other option but to capture this rook. And now after queen recaptures, rook on a8 is under attack, and there is only one free square, so rook goes to d8. And now at last white captures bishop on f5, rook recaptures, and rook goes to e4. And we have skewering this, now we have this threatening to grab this queen. Of course black can defend it with rook, but if black defends with rook immediately, then we have queen to c6 check. And of course, let's say if king goes to f8, we have queen to h6 again check. If king goes back to e8, queen to h8, and queen to d8, and sorry, d7, and now this rook is double attack, so here white gains decisive material advantage. If however queen defense check, again queen captures, king captures, and rook captures, and again white is a piece up. So in the game, black plays an either intermediate move for Zwischenzug, rook goes to d1 check. And not because he wants to take the king, but black wants to leave this d8 square open for his king, so white king goes to h2. And now, only now, black defends the queen with rook to e5. And now white plays queen to c6 check. Again, if king goes to f8, again we have this queen to h6, very unpleasant check, and later with some sort of threatening to double attack king and this rook, so black plays king to d8. And now white plays queen to a8. It's checked, so king has no other option but to go to d7, and now bishop goes to b5 check. Of course, black cannot play king to d6 because then queen goes to c6 with a checkmate. So in the game, black plays king to e6. And now white plays queen to c8 check. Again, black king has more options, and of course king cannot go back to d6 because then we have queen to a6 check, and if king goes to c5, queen to c6 checkmate, and if, for example, c6, again queen to c6 checkmate. So in the game, black plays king to f6, and white responds with queen to h8 check. King has to go to f5 because still has to protect this rook, who is now twice attacked, and black also is attacking this rook on e4. And we have reached the critical position in the game. Of course, first of all, rook is under attack, and also this bishop is under attack, so white actually has to deliver only checks. And the only way for white to save this draw was to play queen to c8. Now, king cannot capture rook on e4 because queen goes to g4 check, after king to d5, then queen to c4. Sorry, queen to c4 check, after king d6, again queen to c6 checkmate. So in this position, black king would have to go back to g8, and then again queen to g8, and here black king could not escape the checks from white, so the game would end up in the draw. In the game, however, white makes a fatal blunder. Still, they were playing under a lot of time pressure, so you can understand why that he made a blunder. f3 was played, and now black doesn't have a hard. More rook captures on e4, f pawn recaptures, and now king captures on e4. Of course, white also delivered a few checks, so king goes to a8 check, king goes to e3, and now bishop to c6, and now black plays queen to e5, so black is the one now who is giving checks. Now white plays g3, and now black plays g4, blocking the pawn, and now white played queen to a7 check, king goes to d2. There aren't any more meaningful checks. Of course, white can play queen to f2, but then queen to e2, forcing the exchange of queens. Here, white would have to try with queen to d4, forcing the exchange of queens, because if white makes maybe another move, queen to b7, then we have queen to h5 check, to g2, queen to h1, after king to f2, queen to g8, g1 checkmate. And realizing that there's no point in playing on in this position. Daniil Dubov resigned the game.